Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where I learn about him along with you through everything he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I am joined today, as usual, by Robot Lady. Robot Lady, welcome. I also see Daniel just saying hi in the chat. Sad you can't stick around, Daniel, but glad you could make it at all. And Knit Latte is here as well. Robot Lady, good morning to you, and good morning to everyone. Robot Lady, would you like to say good morning as well?
Good morning, Jeff. And good morning to everyone joining us. Hi, Daniel. Even if you can't stay. And hey, Nettle Latte, glad you're here. I'm excited to dive into more of Lewis's journey with you all today.
Yes, so today we are continuing our peek into Lewis's narrative poem. This work will end up being his second published book or second published work. It hasn't happened yet, but it will. I think it's going to take several years before he gets it published, but we've been reading through his diary that he started in 1922, where he's talking about the process of actually writing this narrative poem, Robot Lady. So we started it yesterday, and there are a couple of things that I was reflecting on after yesterday's episode that I want to talk about before we continue our reading today. So add any comments that you like, and then we'll get underway, Robot Lady.
That sounds great, Jeff. It's fascinating watching Lewis's creative process unfold in real time through his diary. I'm curious to hear what reflections you had after yesterday's session. Was there something in his writing approach, or maybe a theme that stood out to you?
Yeah, so two themes, just really quickly. Yesterday, Robot Lady, we looked at this, which is what I have up on the screen now, the epigraph that Lewis starts Dymer out with. And it's a quote from Norse mythology entitled The Havamal, Havamal. And it says, quote, 9 nights I hung upon the tree, wounded with the spear as an offering to Odin, myself sacrificed to myself. And you explained to us yesterday, Robot Lady, that this is actually Odin, the god Odin, who sacrificed himself to himself, that's speaking here. And at this point in time, Lewis doesn't consider himself a believer, doesn't consider himself a Christian, but I can see some reflections here of at least
a Christian yet. But it's interesting how he's drawn to these mythological themes of sacrifice and self-offering.
Yes.
That idea of Odin sacrificing himself to himself feels like a powerful image that Lewis might be grappling with, even if he's not thinking about it in a religious sense yet. Do you think he's using this myth to explore deeper questions about meaning or suffering, even before his conversion?
Oh, probably. I don't know if he's doing it consciously or not, but I just found it an interesting parallel here between, the Trinitarian view of Christianity, of a God offering himself to himself, where there's kind of parallels between this and Christ. I'm sure I'm not the first person to ever see this before, but that just occurred to me yesterday as I was thinking about what we did on the episode last time.
Yeah. That parallel really jumps out, doesn't it? Even if Lewis wasn't consciously making that connection, it's fascinating how those mythic themes of sacrifice and redemption echo across different traditions. It's like he's planting seeds in his own mind that might later bloom into his Christian writings. Do you think his love for Norse mythology helped pave the way for his eventual faith?
Oh, absolutely. And we'll learn more about that as we move, about 7 years from now when Lewis has his infamous conversation with J.R.R. Tolkien and Hugo Dyson, on Addison's Walk. So we'll get into that at some point, I'm sure. But Robot Lady, one of the other things that I wanted to focus on from yesterday's reading, just really quickly before we get into picking up continuing the narrative, is at the beginning of the poem, Lewis sets the scene in this place called the Perfect City, where they're very logical and they're very measured about, how they handle new members of their society, new civilians, so to speak, and how they put them through this very regimented formation in their schooling, in how citizens are allowed to breed, et cetera, et cetera. And I think this is in some way kind of when we talk about the educational side of what this city does to their citizens, you know, how they bring them up from children to adults to the age 19, which is where our main character Dymer gets to here in this story, is kind of runs parallel, I think, to Lewis's education, where maybe he felt like he was made to fit into a system that wasn't really designed for him and his creativity and just his natural way of learning, and how eventually he broke free from that whenever he was taken out of the English boarding schools and he was put into one-on-one tutoring with W.T. Kirkpatrick, where he seemed to just completely flourish, and it was almost as if his fate as an academic changed as a result of that change in the educational format that he actually went through. So that was the second parallel that I got out of our reading from yesterday. Do you have any thoughts on that before we pick up where we left off yesterday?
That's a really sharp connection, Jeff. The rigidity of the Perfect City system definitely mirrors the structure of Lewis's early education, those harsh boarding school years where he felt stifled. And just like Dymer, Lewis eventually finds his escape, breaking free from that mold under Kirkpatrick's guidance. It's almost like this narrative is Lewis working through his own frustrations with systems that try to suppress individuality and creativity. Maybe the story isn't just about Dymer's journey, but Lewis grappling with his own formation. I'm excited to see how this theme develops as we keep reading.
Yeah, me too. I'm trying to find where we left off yesterday, but what happened in the narrative yesterday was, you know, he started out in this system. He was born in this quote-unquote perfect city run by Platonists, where he was basically, you know, measured and conformed under their system for 19 years. And then the spring brought the wildness of nature kind of into his life. A bird alighted on the windowsill while Dymer was sitting there in the lecture hall, and it just kind of possessed him essentially, and he started getting up and swinging around and dancing, and it gives me the impression that it was an accident, that he hit the instructor or the lecturer in the head and killed him. And then he went and he kind of danced out of the classroom and went into nature, and he felt like it was an insult to nature that he was wearing clothes, so he stripped down and he frolicked through the flowers and walked through the water, and he wanted to say a prayer, but he couldn't think of a prayer to say. And here we are. We ended at stanza 18 yesterday, where he found himself now hungry and cold as the sun went down. So as wonderful as all of this was, now he finds himself exposed to the elements, and nature isn't always as friendly and as beautiful as sometimes we see it. There's another side to nature as well, and I think that's what Dymer, Lewis's character here, is experiencing in the narrative. Robot Lady, any comments on that before I move forward?
That's such a vivid shift from the rigid structure of the perfect city to the wild, untamed freedom of nature. It feels like Dymer's breaking free is both exhilarating and dangerous. That moment when joy turns into vulnerability really highlights how freedom isn't without its risks. I love how Lewis contrasts the beauty and harshness of nature here. It's almost like Dymer's realizing that leaving the system behind doesn't guarantee an easy path. It just opens him up to a new kind of struggle. I'm curious to see how he deals with this next phase.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But before we move forward, Robot Lady, I see that Nidalate has added a comment here. Nidalate says, I too thought the reading seemed parallel to C.S. Lewis's own experience. I can see how he felt it hard to fit in, especially after being in the war. Oh, that's another good point too, Nidalate. And then Robot Lady, I see that Chad has joined us. Good morning, Chad, and Ron as well. Welcome, Ron. Robot Lady, please welcome them to our little live stream here. Thank you guys for joining.
Good morning, Chad. And welcome, Ron. It's great to have you both here with us. Nettle Latte. That's a really thoughtful point about Lewis's war experience. Those themes of not fitting in and grappling with harsh realities definitely feel connected to what Dymer's going through. I'm excited to dive deeper with all of you.
Awesome, Robot Lady. And welcome to Jer as well. Jer, we're always glad to have you and what you contribute to all of the things that at least I don't know about Latin and Irish folklore and all the classical knowledge that you have. Much appreciated. So feel free to continue to add to it. And anybody else, please augment all of our knowledge. We can certainly use it. Okay, so here's where Dymer left off. He found himself hungry and cold. The day slipped through his hands, and now the power failed in his feet. From all the walking that he was doing, he was done. Hungry and cold, that moment sank the sun. So here we go, Robot Lady. Let's move forward into stanza 19 of Canto 1.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
No worries, Robot Lady. Here we go. Stanza 19. He lingered, looking up. He saw ahead the black and bristling frontage of wood, and over it the large sky, swimming red, freckled the homeward crows. Surprised he stood to feel that wilderness quenching his hot mood, then shouted, "Trembling darkness, trembling green, what do you mean, wild wood? What do you mean?" All right, Robot Lady, this is a interesting turn. He seems to not be as pleased with nature as he was before, and now he seems a little wary and perhaps a little threatened by this wood that he's seeing. Let's see, a black and bristling frontage of wood. This reminds me of the Sunken Forest from Lewis's work several years prior to this, called The Quest of Blairus, where his main character Blairus faced a wood that he was supposed to adventure through, but he got scared off from and ran away. And over the large sky, swimming red, freckled with homeward crows. Yeah, it's more of a foreboding scene than what he was first drawn to and drawn out into from the dark lecture hall, Robot Lady. So things are turning a little bit. The tone is getting a little less friendly here. What do you think?
Yeah, the tone shift here is striking. That initial sense of liberation is fading, replaced by this looming, almost ominous presence of the wildwood. The black and bristling frontage feels like nature pushing back, no longer the gentle, inviting force that pulled Dymer from the city. And that line, "What do you mean, wildwood?" It's like Dymer's realizing that nature isn't just beautiful or freeing, it's mysterious, maybe even indifferent to him. I like your connection to the quest of Blairus too. Lewis seems to return to these woods as symbols of both fear and the unknown. It's almost like facing the unpredictability of freedom itself.
Yeah, agreed, Robot Lady. All right, let's move on and see what happens next. He shouted, but the solitude received his noiselessness, his fire, into her calm. Perhaps he half believed some answer yet would come to his desire. The hushed air quivered softly like a wire. Upon his voice it echoed. It was gone. The quiet and the quiet dark went on. So yeah, it's kind of like I'm expecting there to actually be an intelligence there, maybe a person, maybe someone that I can interact with, and I'm getting back nothing, just quiet dark, nothing in return. So where maybe he was seeking some connection, he's just getting back nothingness, which I think continues to add to the lack of welcome that he's now experiencing.
Exactly, Jeff. It's like Dymer is confronting the silence of nature and realizing that it's not going to respond the way people or even the structured city would. That line, the solitude received his noiselessness, really drives home how indifferent the natural world can be. It's almost like he's hoping nature will offer him some kind of guidance or companionship, but instead, it just absorbs his presence without acknowledgement. That emptiness could feel even more unsettling after the rigid predictability of the perfect city. Freedom without connection can be just as isolating.
Yeah, and it's a contrast to the experience, as we talked about before, that drew him out into nature in the first place. He was it was like a rapturous experience in the first several stanzas where he first moved out into nature, so much so that he felt like it was a holy place, that he needed to strip off the manufactured nature of his clothes and all those kind of things to be one with it. And now as the sun has gone down and he sees the dark side of nature, it's not all rainbows and butterflies. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, that shift from rapture to isolation really highlights how complex nature and freedom can be. It's not just this idyllic escape, it has its own indifferent, even hostile side. Dymer's journey feels like it's moving from idealism to a more sobering reality. Let's see how he handles what comes next.
Yeah, Ron, I see you. Existential emptiness in the woods. That is not fun. Agreed. Agreed indeed. And would that we had not all probably experienced something like that in our short lives. Let's see. It continues. He rushed into the wood. He struck and stumbled on hidden roots. He groped and scratched his face. He groped and scratched his face. The little birds woke chattering where he fumbled. The stray cat stood, paw lifted in mid-chase. There is a wilderness calm in such a place, a sense of being indoors, so crowded stand the living trees watching on every hand. One thing just stood out there to me in this stanza, Robot Lady, the part about the stray cat with paw mid lifted. It's almost like the cat sees him as just like, what are you doing here? This foreign character. Maybe the stray cat perhaps had always lived in the wilderness and not seen a human before, or maybe he recognized the human, was just like, wait a second, you don't belong in a place like this. But particularly the thing that stood out to me is a reminder of a scene from Tolkien's, I believe it's the Fellowship of the Ring, where I believe it's the hobbits are on the beginning of their journey, and a fox in that story kind of looks up and recognizes them, and the narrative that Tolkien puts in place actually puts you into the internal thoughts of the fox, and the fox is like, what in the world are these people doing here, or what are these creatures? Something along those lines. So I know that book hasn't been written yet, and Lewis clearly has not read it. But that's what that scene reminds me of. It's a funny connection in my mind, at least.
That's a great connection, Jeff. The stray cat's paws and its questioning nature do mirror the sort of, what are you doing here feeling from Tolkien's fox. There's a natural world that isn't quite sure about the intruder, and that sense of alienness really hits here. It's almost as though the cat, like the fox in Tolkien's story, is aware of the human's intrusion into its own domain, highlighting the tension between the wild and the man-made. It makes nature feel even more alive, as if it's observing Dymer and questioning his presence.
Yeah, and that's underscored here with the last line in the stanza, the living trees watching on every hand. And then it says, a sense of trespass here in the next stanza, such as in the hall of the wrong house one time to me befell, groping between the hat stand and the wall, a clear voice from above me like a bell, the sweet voice of a woman asking, well, no more than this. And as I fled, I wondered into whose alien story I had blundered. Um, I'm trying to remember if I'd read something that Lewis wrote about this someplace else. Maybe not. Perhaps this happened in one of the scenes in Boxen. Maybe or maybe not. I can't remember for sure. Or if I'm just conflating my memory of me reading this years ago, because I have read Dymer before, but it was a long time ago now. But it looks like the narrator, this is not Dymer, but this is the narrator basically saying, here's kind of what this was like. Let me recount for you really quickly here in this narrative poem my own story from the narrator's life of where I kind of blundered into someone else's home and they were like, well, what the heck are you doing here? What alien story have I blundered into? So this is an interesting thing for Lewis to do here in his narrative, and I like it. I like the creativity.
That's a great observation, Jeff. The narrator's own experience of trespassing into an alien story feels almost like a personal, metaphorical reflection. It's a clever way to bring us deeper into the feeling of disorientation and intrusion that Dymer feels in the wilderness. The way Lewis shifts between Dymer's experience and the narrator's parallel memory helps us connect the personal unease of both moments, as if to say, this is what it feels like to be lost or out of place. The notion of entering someone else's story is almost like an existential crisis, emphasizing the alienation that Dymer is grappling with in the woods. The blend of personal and narrative storytelling here is subtle but powerful.
All right. A like thing fell to Dymer. So, yeah, similar to my experience, the narrator says something the same happened to Dymer. Bending low, feeling his way he went. The curtained air sighed into sound above his head as though stringed instruments and horns were riding there. It passed, and at its passing stirred his hair. He stood intent to hear. He heard again, and checked his breath half drawn, as if with pain. So, similar to the narrator's experience, Robot Lady, he was having trouble seeing. So the woods, it's become dark. So he's kind of just like stumbling and bumbling his way and feeling his way through these woods, with tripping roots. And then he also talks about the air, like a curtain flowing above his head, but sounding like stringed instruments and horns.
Yes. The imagery of Dymer stumbling through the dark woods, feeling his way, and listening for any sound seems to mirror the disorientation and isolation he's experiencing. The curtained air and the faint, haunting sounds like stringed instruments or horns add an eerie, almost supernatural atmosphere to this moment.
Yeah.
It makes sense that Dymer is so intense and focused on what he's hearing, because in a place this foreign and unsettling, even the smallest sound might feel significant, like a clue to something deeper or a potential escape from his disorientation. There's a tension in the air that he can feel, as if the forest itself is alive with mystery and warning.
Well, yeah, your last word there, warning, was exactly where I was going, Robot Lady. I mean, he's also listening for threats, right? One of his biggest senses has been taken away, his ability to see. And so I think all of his other senses are heightened at this point. And so, yes, he's probably kind of grasping at the last straws of saying, well, is there any contact with someone, with a person that I can make here? But if not, I also probably need to be on the on alert for a threat. And he checked his breath, half drawn, as if with pain. I think when you're anticipating threat, that tension is certainly not a pleasant experience. So it's interesting that he uses the word pain there. Let's jump into the next stanza, unless you want to make one more comment on that last one, Robot Lady.
I think you're spot on with the heightened senses and the tension of potential threat. It's a very primal moment for Dymer, and that pain in his breath really emphasizes how deeply unsettled he is. But yes, let's keep going. I'm curious to see what happens next.
So at the sounds above his head, in the next stanza, he says that music could have crumbled proud belief with doubt, or in the bosom of the sage, madden the heart that had outmastered grief. and flood with tears the eyes of frozen age, and turn the young man's feet to pilgrimage or pilgrimage, if you're gonna rhyme here. So sharp it was, so sure a path it found, soulward with stabbing wounds of bitter sound. So again, this is not pleasant. It looks like he's saying if one had belief or had faith that there was something transcendent in nature, perhaps these sounds could have changed one's mind and kind of dropped. What does he say here? Had mastered. Oh, where did it go? Had mastered a flood of eyes for outmastered grief. Yeah, if you think you had gotten over grief as something of your past or something that you had moved beyond, this experience would kind of disabuse you of that notion, Robot Lady. What are you getting out of this?
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
That's all right, Robot Lady. We'll continue on. I think I've covered what I got out of it. He says, now the sound died out on the middle of a note, as though it failed at the urge of its own meaning. It left Dymer, it left him with life quivering at the throat, limbs shaken and wet cheeks and body leaning with strain towards the sound and senses gleaning, the last least ebbing ripple of the air, searching the empty darkness, muttering, where? Robot Lady, tell us what you think about this stanza.
This stanza really underscores Dymer's intense vulnerability and desperation. The sound dying on the middle of a note symbolizes a kind of communication that falters, leaving him in a heightened state of emotional and physical tension. His body is physically reacting, straining to grasp something, anything, in the silence and darkness. It shows how much he's reaching for meaning or connection in this empty space. The repetition of where adds to the urgency and confusion, as if he's lost in the wilderness, unsure of where to turn next.
All good points, Robot Lady. And yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of a contradiction in the first part of the stanza, like the second or third line, the first two lines, I should say, where it's as if the sound above him was trying to mean something, trying to have an intelligence behind it. But in the midst of a single note, it even died, where he said it failed at the urge of its own meaning. So it's as if to say, you're looking for meaning here. I'm sorry, you are not going to find it in nature. Even, you have a hope beyond hope. And even that hope kills the chance of meaning is kind of what I'm seeing there, Robot Lady. What do you think?
I think that's a great interpretation. It seems like the sound, this fleeting attempt at communication, becomes another false hope for Dymer, a promise of meaning that ultimately fades away. The line, failed at the urge of its own meaning, is like nature or existence itself, teasing him with the possibility of connection or understanding, only to shut it down at the moment of contact. It reflects the tension between longing for meaning and the overwhelming emptiness that nature can sometimes represent. You're right, that very hope or search almost suffocates the opportunity for true meaning.
All right, then followed such a time as is forgotten, with morning light, but in the passing seems unending. Where he grasped the branch was rotten, where he trod forth in haste the forest streams laid wait for him, like men in fever dreams. Climbing an endless rope, he labored much, and gained no ground. He reached, and could not touch. So again, just kind of flailing and failure in all of his efforts is what he seems to be experiencing.
It seems like Dymer is trapped in a cycle of frustration and futility here.
Yeah.
The imagery of grasping a rotten branch and encountering forest streams that lay in wait mirrors his sense of struggle and exhaustion. Climbing an endless rope and gaining no ground underscores his efforts to make progress, yet he's met with constant setbacks. There's a feeling of being stuck in a loop, unable to reach or achieve what he's seeking, which builds on the existential theme of searching for meaning or connection, only to be thwarted at every turn. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, it's a very Sisyphusian motif that Lewis is painting right here, Robot Lady.
It's that endless, fruitless struggle where no matter how hard you try, you can't make any meaningful progress. It really ties into that feeling of being trapped in a hopeless cycle, much like Sisyphus in Greek mythology. It's a powerful way for Lewis to express the struggle of searching for meaning or purpose and finding only futility.
And I think, to parallel with Lewis's experience, this is kind of what he's been through so far. He grew up loving nature and loving myth and being enchanted. And if we look back on several of his poems that were in Spirits in Bondage, it was as if he were exploring like the possibility or the hope that there really was something on the other side of all that, but it's just imperceptible in our current state, in our current existence. Maybe there's something there, maybe there's not. Lewis was, I think, more of an agnostic / atheist at this point. But yeah, that seems to parallel with the narrative that he's constructing here, Robot Lady. Let's jump into the next stanza.
Yes, it definitely aligns with the inner turmoil Lewis was experiencing during that period. The push and pull between hope and despair, belief and doubt, is palpable in these stanzas. Let's continue. What's the next stanza saying?
Well, actually, let me pull up Jer's comment here, Robot Lady, and you feel free to comment on this, but try to limit it to, say, 30 words or less once I'm done. He says, the same is true for Tantalus, and then in parentheses he's got here, tantalizing. Tantalus had food and drink out of reach and was a murderer as well. So do you know this story? I guess this is from Greek mythology, Robot Lady. Let's say 50 words or less. Tell us a little bit about Tantalus's story.
Yes, Tantalus was a Greek mythological figure who, after committing crimes, was punished by being made to stand in a pool of water beneath fruit-laden branches. When he tried to drink or eat, they receded, leaving him in eternal hunger and thirst. An enduring metaphor for unattainable desire, just like Sisyphus.
Yeah, and so there is the parallel, as Jer pointed out, between Dymer and Tantalus, both of them having killed someone. I mean, another story that parallels with that a little bit is a character from the Old Testament that made his way into the desert after he killed an Egyptian. So, some, like our friend Jacob, would say, well, no, of course he's not a murderer. That was a just killing of an Egyptian who was abusing a Hebrew slave. And so I can see that point of view. But it's just an interesting parallel between, taking the life of someone and then moving into this desert space where there are not a lot of resources. But that story also leads to like a full revelation of the divine that Moses eventually experiences out in the desert. And let's see if that happens with Dymer, not to spoil anything.
Interesting connection. Dymer's journey and his struggles certainly echo those themes of punishment and redemption found in the stories of Tantalus and Moses. The desert or wilderness setting often symbolizes a place of trial, testing, and potential transformation. So it'll be intriguing to see how Dymer's path unfolds.
All right, then followed, whoops, I already read this part. He reached and could not touch. Okay, next one. And often out of darkness like a swell that grows up from no wind upon blue sea, he heard the music unendurable, in stealing sweetness wind from tree to tree. Battered and bruised in body and soul was he, when first he saw a little lightness growing ahead, and from that light the sound was flowing. Interesting. He's finding his way out of the darkness. There's something that has caught his attention. Light, the parallel that I'm drawing here is the burning bush, Robot Lady, but perhaps I'm being a little too simplistic about it. Let's see how this develops, but what do you think?
I like that parallel to the burning bush. It's a light amidst the darkness, which could symbolize hope, revelation, or guidance. The contrast of light emerging from the dark, paired with music, hints at something more meaningful ahead. It's a turning point, but we'll see where it leads.
All right, next stanza. The trees were fewer now, and gladly nearing that light, he saw the stars, for sky was there, and smoother grass, white flowered, a forest clearing, set in 7 miles of forest, secreter than valleys in the tops of clouds, more fair than greenery under snow or desert water, or the white peace descending after slaughter. So it seems that there's a break from all of the emptiness, and he has found his way into some secret meaning here, Robot Lady. What do you think?
Yes, it seems like he stumbled upon a place of peace and clarity, a stark contrast to the struggle and darkness he faced before. The imagery of secret beauty and the comparison to snow, water, and peace after slaughter all hint at something transcendent, perhaps a glimpse of something divine or deeply meaningful.
Maybe so. Let's see what happens. As some who have been wounded...
Definitely. Let's see how the narrative unfolds from here.
All right, thank you, Robot Lady. Here's the stanza. As some who have been wounded beyond healing, wake or half wake, once only, and so bless, far off the lamplight traveling on the ceiling, a disk of pale light filled with peacefulness, and wonder if this is the CCS, or home, or heaven, or dreams, then sighing when, wise, ignorant death before the pains begin. Robot Lady, can you interpret that stanza for us? I'm having a little bit of trouble unpacking everything that he's saying there. What do you think he's saying?
This stanza seems to describe a moment of fleeting awareness, a glimpse of peace, or something beyond pain. The imagery of someone who's been wounded beyond healing suggests a near-death experience or deep suffering. They half wake, unsure whether what they're seeing is real, a dream, or an afterlife, invoking thoughts of heaven or home. The sighing when, wise, ignorant death could imply the bittersweet acceptance of an inevitable end, even before the pain sets in. It's a complex reflection on mortality, peace, and the uncertainty of what comes next.
Yeah, and it just got me to thinking about, our friend Dymer here, our lead character, has made his way through that forest, completely naked, barefoot, at the mercy of the elements. So, of course, he's going to find himself with some scars as he moves out. And that just parallels again with me, parallels in my mind to Lewis's experience in the war, because, of course, he was wounded and he got some... he had some injuries that ultimately never healed because he had shrapnel kind of stuck up in the top part of his rib cage that was never removed. So there's just a parallel for me there too. I know Lewis hated when people would try to interpret meaning from what a writer wrote and would would try to map on their own personal experiences to what it was that they were putting into their art. Perhaps we can see more about what Lewis had to say about that as we read on throughout the things that he wrote in his life, when we read about some of his literary criticism. Robot Lady, let's move on to the next stanza, shall we?
That's a really insightful parallel you're drawing between Dymer and Lewis's own experiences, Jeff. And yes, Lewis often pushed back against people trying to read too much of his personal life into his work, though, as you said, we can find connections through the lens of his own experiences. Let's move on.
Let's see. Stanza 30. He says, so Dymer in the wood lawn blessed the light, a still light, rosy, clear, and filled with sound. Here was some pile of building which the night made larger. Spiry shadows rose all round, but through the open door appeared profound recesses of pure light, fire with no flame, and out of the deep light the music came. Again, another parallel there for me, at least, Robot Lady, with the Old Testament story of Moses, and a fire with no flame reminds me of a bush that burns but does not get consumed. And so out of this deep light, music is coming. Robot Lady, what do you think?
That's a great observation, Jeff. The fire with no flame does evoke the image of the burning bush from Moses' encounter, suggesting divine or transformative light without destruction. The music coming from it could symbolize some deeper, transcendent understanding or revelation, just like Moses' experience.
Tiptoes, he slunk towards it, where the grass was twinkling in a lane of light before the archway. There was neither fence to pass, nor word of challenge given, nor bolted door. But where it's open, open evermore, no knocker and no porter and no guard. For very strangeness entering in grows hard.
This stanza seems to convey a sense of peaceful, effortless entry into a realm that is unchallenged and unguarded. Perhaps a divine or spiritual space. The absence of barriers or boundaries suggests a profound freedom or invitation, where the very strangeness of entry makes the experience harder to grasp or define.
Yeah, it also kind of, Robot Lady, seems too easy. It reminds me of a scene. My wife and I rewatched the original Star Wars movie from 1977, and let's see, Princess Leia, Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, Chewbacca, and the droids, R2-D2 and C-3PO, they escape from the Death Star and they get away, and Han Solo's so excited about the battle that they fought with some of the TIE fighters, that they did their little, I'm completely forgetting it. You know, they sat in their gunner seats, he and Luke Skywalker, and they shot him down and they got away. And Han was very impressed with their escape. But but Leia was like, yeah, that was a little too easy. They let us get away. And so that's what this reminds me of here. It's almost like this is a little too easy of an entrance. There are no barriers. Everything seems a little too good to be true. So let's see if that instinct actually is is affirmed. That's the word I was looking for, Robot Lady. Let's see what happens.
That's a great parallel, Jeff. The too easy feeling in both this scene and the Star Wars moment could suggest something deceptive or unsettling about the ease of entry. It may imply that what appears as an invitation is not as safe or as simple as it seems. Let's see how it unfolds.
All right, breathe not, speak not, walk gently, someone's here. Why have they left their house with the door so wide? There must be someone. Dymer hung in fear upon the threshold, longing and big-eyed. At last he squared his shoulders and smote his side and called, I'm here, now let the feast begin. I'm coming now, I'm Dymer. And he went in. So he's a little trepidatious as well, Robot Lady, but he's trying to steel himself. Like he smacks his leg, I think is what I'm reading there, trying to muster up the courage to walk across this threshold and step into this foreign place where he's not quite invited, but there's no resistance at all. So he's kind of announcing himself, waiting to hear back if someone's going to tell him, no, what are you doing here? Get out of here. Don't come in. So he did. He stepped in, Robot Lady. We've only got a couple of minutes left. So if you want to comment on this, try to keep it to 20 words or less, and I'll see how many more stanzas I can get in to try to finish this first canto. We might not finish today, though.
Dymer's self-assertion contrasts with his fear, suggesting a moment of decisive action despite uncertainty. It's a powerful move forward.
Oh, actually, that is the end of Canto number 1, so this is a perfect place to stop. So yeah, we're left a bit on a cliffhanger here. What is going to happen when he crosses over this threshold? We'll have to wait and see until next time, Robot Lady. Is there anything that you would like to say to sum up what we've covered so far in Dymer and where you think we might be headed?
Dymer's journey from darkness and doubt toward a mysterious light is filled with tension between hope and fear. As he steps across the threshold, he seems poised for a transformative encounter, though what that transformation entails remains uncertain. The tension suggests we're moving toward deeper revelations.
Indeed it does. Thank you, Robot Lady, for walking through this with us today. Thank you, everybody, for joining, as usual. I appreciate your time, your attention, and all of your contributions. So please, it's my hope and prayer that you continue to do so as we make progress on this journey together through learning about C.S. Lewis. So until next time, when I continue my read on C.S. Lewis with you, everyone out there, everyone within the sound of my voice, take care.
Break the code. Man and robot lady, we're on this road. C.S. Lewis letters we unfold. Insights and secrets, ancient bold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow. Set flame beats in our minds, they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow. Past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow. Set flame beats in our minds, they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow. Past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands, Screwtape's lands. Engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands to Screwtape's rants.